Hello, I'm Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, in March of this year, Cattle State Senator Deb Fischer, a Republican from Nebraska, introduced a hastily conceived bill to restore lost competition in the cattle market and improve transparency over prices paid in the cattle market. Now, the Fischer bill was crafted secretly. It was not vetted among cattle groups for their input, and it was slapped together quickly following the most recent cattle market disruptions associated primarily with the 2020 COVID pandemic. And as a result, the bill does nothing to restore competition. It actually delegates that responsibility to the U.S. Department of Agriculture and gives that bureaucracy up to 2 years to do it. Nor does it change the broken structure of the cattle market in any way. In fact, it locks in the harmful market conditions for up to 2 more years. And as for its transparency goals, it simply modifies the long-standing hog contract library, which did absolutely nothing to stem the mass exodus of hog farmers from their industry. The Fischer bill was then slightly modified and touted as a great compromise, a compromise now being offered as a take-it-or-leave-it cattle market reform measure that some groups are saying is the very best the industry can get. But in sharp contrast to the development of the compromise Fischer bill is a bill just introduced by an urban senator, a senator who's about as far away from the cattle industry as a senator can get. It's Senator Cory Booker, a Democrat from New Jersey. The Booker bill, Senate Bill 3285, is designed to do 2 things: reform workplace conditions in packing plants and reform the broken structure of the U.S. cattle market. But unlike the Fischer bill that was drafted in relative secrecy, the cattle market reforms in the Booker bill took many years in development, and they were vetted among many farm and ranch groups. RCAF USA was among the farm and ranch groups that were invited to help draft the bill's cattle market reforms. And we began work on the final stages of the bill's cattle market reforms back in early 2019, which was a full year before the outset of the COVID pandemic. But the foundation for the Booker bill's cattle market reforms originated in 2008, when 13 farm and ranch groups drafted what is called a transition document. Now, a transition document is a detailed description of reforms given to each incoming new president. It's essentially a wish list of reforms the groups want their government to implement. The 2008 transition document was titled Agricultural Competition and Contract Fairness Issues. Now, several of the Booker bill's cattle market reforms originated in this transition document submitted over 10 years ago. Those reforms include ending captive supply arrangements, ending packer ownership of cattle, eliminating the requirement to first prove an injury to competition before a producer can prove he or she was harmed by a packer, and expanding the scope of mandatory country of origin labeling for beef and for other products. So jump ahead a decade to November of 2020, which was when the 2008 transition document was updated by 23 farm and ranch groups. Those updates included virtually every cattle market reform measure that is now memorialized in Senate Bill 3285, the Booker bill. Now, it doesn't happen often that a member of Congress actually goes to industry groups to ask them what reforms are needed to rebuild the broken cattle market in a way that restores robust competition and restores the opportunity for profitability for independent family farmers and ranchers. In fact, that hasn't happened for 40 years or longer, but it's happening right now. Senator Cory Booker accepted the recommendations that were carefully developed by nearly 24 farm and ranch groups over the course of many years. He then took those recommendations, gathered a smaller working group of farm and ranch representatives, of which RCAF USA was a part, and then included the final recommendations in a comprehensive cattle market reform package now contained in his new bill. And as a result of having vetted these reforms through farm and ranch organizations, Senator Booker's bill is the near-perfect cattle market reform bill. So what should cattle producers do now that everyone knows the reforms needed by their industry are finally being introduced in Congress? Well, we urge you to call your 2 U.S. senators and urge them to reject the hastily drafted and compromised Fischer bill, that's Senate Bill 3229, and instead urge them to support Senate Bill 3285, the new bill introduced by Senator Cory Booker that contains reforms recommended by farmers and ranchers themselves. This is our opportunity to win, and to win big for you, your children, and your children's children. So please help us. Get these reforms implemented by calling your senators as soon as possible. And please go to our website at www.labelourbeef.com and stay tuned to learn more about this important bill. With that, have a productive week. Thank you and goodbye.